This is Louis Katz with The Date on Tell Craig Your Story podcast.
I remember there was one date I went on when I was single. It was pretty intense. I showed up on the date. We hadn't met in person at all. This is the first time we're meeting. And I show up to dinner, and I get there. I notice she's wearing a very low-cut top. I don't like that on a first date. It makes me very nervous. You know, because now I know my only job is just to maintain eye contact, right? That's all I got to do. Only problem was this lady, her eyes were very close to her breasts. It was tough. That's kind of messed up to do to a guy, right? Make him hold a serious conversation while you're rocking a lot of cleavage? That's not right. What do you do next? Find a hobo, make him take a math test next to a cheeseburger? I'm doing a good job. I'm focused, locked into the eyes. But I think she must have been checking out my cleavage because I like to go a couple buttons unbuttoned on my shirt. Little tuft of chest hair popping out the top to act as a kind of teaser trailer. Apparently this lady, she saw the trailer and was like, I don't think I want to see that movie. Because she actually suggests me, she says, hey, have you ever thought about getting waxed? Yeah, how is that okay for a woman to ask of a man? I want you to be some kind of a hairless, prepubescent man boy. And that's okay for her to ask of me, but if I want her to put her hair in pigtails so I can tie her with a jump rope to a swing set, I'm a perv. Double standard. But it's the first date, and she's cute, so I'm just like, yeah, I'll get my chest waxed. You got a Groupon? Let's go, right after dinner. Sounds fun. That's my rule on dating in general. You just gotta kind of lie your way through it. Like whenever a woman says anything negative about herself to me, I just come back with the positive, even if it's completely untrue. No matter what, right? I'm ugly. No, you're beautiful. I'm fat. You're voluptuous. I'm cross-eyed. Well, you've got a unique point of view. So I'm lying my way through the date. And it's tough because we do not agree on very many things, but I'm pretending we do. Like, she's very superstitious, and I hate that kind of stuff. She's way into astrology. She's saying things like, I wasn't sure if we can get along because I'm a Scorpio, and you're a Libra. And all I'm thinking is like, nah, I don't think we're going to get along because I'm a grown-up, and apparently you believe in star magic. She's like, I'm seeing a tarot card reader downtown. You should really check her out. Well, I'm already seeing a warlock on the west side. That's what I'm thinking, but all I tell her is like, that's great, you found a reliable card sorceress. It's really hard to find these days. Finally, she says something where I just can't hold in my true thoughts and feelings anymore. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, she goes, so what do you think is the most versatile fruit? I don't know. Hugh Jackman? What the fuck? What are we talking about? She goes, nope, it's a tomato. I said, nope, you're wrong. It's not a tomato. Tomato is not the most versatile fruit. She goes, well, tomato is quite versatile. It's good in sandwiches, and it's good in salads, and it's good in pasta sauce, and it's good in ketchup. I'm like, yes, thank you. I'm aware of all the uses of a tomato. But tomato could never be the most versatile fruit because tomatoes suck at doing one very important job, and that is being a fucking fruit. Right? Never sitting on a tropical beach want to reach for a hot, juicy tomato. Try and sell me some tomato ice cream. I will burn your artisanal organic ice cream shack down. She's like, well, but technically tomatoes are fruits. Yeah, sure. And technically, if you got a PhD in French literature, you're a doctor. Doesn't mean I want you checking me for a hernia. I don't care how much you studied Balzac. I'm telling her, I said, tomato is a vegetable. She goes, no, tomato is a fruit because it has seeds. I said, no, you know who else has seeds? Caitlyn Jenner. But she lives her life as a vegetable. She identifies as a vegetable. She's a goddamn vegetable. And you're transphobic and you don't know shit about produce. She said, could you please stop yelling? I was like, I'm going to pay for this dinner. Bad first date.
Hi guys, Craig here. Welcome to another edition of the podcast, Tell Craig Your Story. Today we'll be speaking to Louis Katz. He is a US comedian who's traveled the world doing his stand-up comedian show. He's been on The Late Show with Jimmy Fallon. He's done some writing as well with FX Totally Biased. He's featured in the Montreal Comedy Festival, and he's also brought out 2 albums as well. Katz Kill in 2018, and If These Balls Could Talk in 2011. Now, I was lucky enough to see Louis in Suzhou, China, of all places, and I got to meet him, and we had a good chat, and we stayed in contact, and we were able to set up a time to do the podcast, which we're very lucky for. But before we go, please go to our Facebook and social media sites. We're on Twitter, VK, WeChat, and also we have a link where Tell Craig Your Story podcast is available. We're on Apple iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're on iHeartRadio. So we have quite a few opportunities for you guys to listen to the podcast. So the first question I asked with Louis was, how has the coronavirus affected his touring? All right, here we go. Louis Katz on Tell Craig Your Story podcast.
It forever, and now he's pretending like he's on top of it and taking charge. That's how he just switched. Decided that it's he was totally on top of it the whole time within the last couple of weeks, and he keeps having these horrific press conferences. We're dealing with a leader who doesn't believe in science, who doesn't believe in facts when we need facts and science. So it's pretty scary. And it's also scary, the way he kept calling it the Chinese virus, which is really tough for a lot of Asian Americans. Really just such a with Trump, it's just one horrible thing after another. And I'm not trying to overstate it, but it's hard not to overstate. It's not overstating it. It's just so bad one after another that it's pretty scary. But me and all my friends were just trying not to spiral on the news stuff. The day-to-day is, luckily I have savings. All my road work was canceled, and I was mostly focusing on stand-up road work this year. Yes. But, I have savings, and I'm safe, and my family and friends, none of them are sick yet. So,
that's
I'm just trying to focus on that, really.
Yes. And with the whole touring thing, I was reading that you were on like a bit of a long schedule there. You had quite a bit of a tour there in the US. How many dates did you get into this current tour?
I'd say that's the only. It was the longest consecutive string of dates that I'd ever done. I took some of them were I'm not sure how it works in Australia, but here usually a club week, quote unquote week, is just a Thursday through a Sunday more or less.
Right.
So when I say 6 weeks, I'm still going back home for the first half of most of the weeks. But it was still 6 weeks in a row, which I never booked for myself. It's pretty. There's plenty of actual tragedies going on this year, so forgive me if I complain about my minor inconvenience. But I will, since you asked me. It was.
Well, the whole 2020 hasn't been the greatest start to the year for a lot of people, but let's hope in the next couple of months it sort of gets back to normal and you can get back to do that. So so where did you go to for this tour before it stopped? Like you stopped off in a couple of cities in the US?
Yeah, the whole year I was really, because I switch off between writing for television and doing stand-up. And this year I was really focusing on doing stand-up specifically in hopes of I was going to do Edinburgh, and I still might do Edinburgh Festival in August. And then shoot a special soon after that. But and so I really wanted to focus. I was booking myself at a lot of gigs. I was really gonna just make my living and just focus on the stand-up and kind of not try and work on other projects because I'm always kind of splitting my time. So this run of shows went from I also split my touring business is split between my own headlining gigs and opening for the hilarious Dave Attell.
Right.
So that's that's how it ran for this tour. It was I believe the first dates were I was with Attell in Oklahoma City, and then I was headlining myself in Appleton, Wisconsin, and then I was with Attell in Phoenix, Arizona, and then I was headlining myself in Seattle right before all the shit went crazy there, so that was a close call.
Yes.
And then I went to Austin, Texas, and then from Austin, Texas, I was supposed to do a run of one-nighters. So those actually were all next to each other. So that was going to be about like how many shows was it? Maybe 9 shows in 10 days in almost
Wow.
all different cities. It was 3 shows in Austin, Texas, 1 show in Houston, Texas. Then I flew from Houston to New Orleans, rented a car there, and then I was doing. New Orleans is an interesting city. It's one of the most amazing, unique cities in the United States, but it does not have a comedy club.
Wow. How does that work?
Well, the deal is there's a problem like this in a couple of U.S. cities, New Orleans and Miami specifically, where they have a very you think they would because for having an exciting nightlife.
Yeah, of course.
But
yeah.
their exciting nightlife doesn't include sitting and quietly listening to someone speak.
Right.
It includes getting trashed and dancing to either to DJs in Miami or to live music in New Orleans, and it doesn't really just being there quietly and paying attention to something doesn't really go with the vibe of the town. So
Right.
I think Ellen DeGeneres is from there, and she had a club there at one point in the 80s, but it really has never had a full-time comedy club. But my ex-girlfriend was a comedian who was based there, and for a little while before she left, and because of that I've gotten to know the local scene there, and I've got information for a bunch of one-night gigs in the surrounding area. So I can still go down there and pick up money and tour in all these surrounding cities, which is actually really good business for me because these towns don't have comedy clubs, so they're really starved for comedy. So people come out, they pay decent money, they're great crowds. So what I did was I flew into New Orleans. I played Mobile, Alabama, Pensacola, Florida. Then I had a night off in New Orleans. Then I was in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and that night off in New Orleans was that Wednesday when all the shit went down. I can't remember what it is. There's 3 things that happened. It was Tom Hanks getting it, and this is how it was in the States. It was Tom Hanks getting it, the NBA being canceled, and he got it with you guys. You guys gave it to him. Yeah. And then, no, sorry. Now I'm doing the whole China virus thing, but against Australians. I don't want to do that. No. But Tom Hanks got it, the NBA got canceled, and then something else happened like within the hour, and it's like when it really like everyone here at least was like, whoa, this is not a drill, this is the real deal. I got in one more gig after that, which was the Hattiesburg, Mississippi gig, and then I had to cancel my next 2 gigs, which was New Orleans and Lafayette, Louisiana, and then also my new girlfriend was supposed to meet me down there. And we were supposed to spend a few days in New Orleans. We've been looking forward to it. It was a way to celebrate finally finishing all this 6 weeks of work, and all that got canceled. And that Friday, I ended up heading back to New York. But it was, as my friend put it, a positive way to look at it would be that I got in so much work right up until the very deadline, the end of the road. So that's one positive way to look at it.
Like nine shows in 10 days, did you say before?
Yeah, something like that. Maybe more because I was 2 a night in Austin. So it was like it was supposed to be that. The last 2 got canceled, so that was really bummed me out. And it was also like I just now I finally listened to the very last show I did. I haven't listened to stand up or really written stand up since that Thursday. And now it's been, maybe over 10, 11, maybe 11 days, 12 days since then. And this was my first time listening to it. And it actually kind of bummed me out because it was good. I was like, oh, man, that hour was going to be really good. Well, so much for that.
So you were sort of like getting on a roll, getting into like a routine of like doing it every night. And that's what I wanted to ask. So when you're doing consistent shows like every day, do you keep the same sort of set or do you sort of mix it up to make it interesting for you? Or do you sort of stick to a sane routine?
Well, the thing is, I'm trying to. The reason one of the many reasons I wanted to go to Edinburgh and film a special this year is I work better with a deadline. So if I can give myself a deadline of when something has to be done by, I know I can get the work done.
Right.
Thinking of that, I was really trying to work, and also I'd actually thought, there's so much stand-up right now and so many comedians out there that I really thought I need to do something to set myself apart from the pack.
Yes.
And so I already wanted to do either something with a narrative or something with a theme, something that made it seem more than just a collection of jokes. And it just so happens that the style of comedy they do at Edinburgh, they like a theme. They like it to be about something. Okay. So it worked out for that. So I was really just trying to figure out what the theme is as I was getting towards the end of these gigs, and I was really I was like, oh, it kind of works, and I could make it work all together. The problem is, so I do try and work on it as much as I can, but a lot of the problem with doing especially these one night gigs when I'm going from city to city is that so much of my day is spent traveling.
Yeah, of
course. And I don't really have the time to sit down and write. And this happened. I mean, there's probably a reason no one goes on 6-week tours in the middle of winter. Was that it was winter here? So every single week of this tour, it happened every single week. It started off was I'd leave early, and I know I'd be sleepy when I'd get there, but I knew that when I'd get there, I was getting so early that I could take a nap before the shows and I'd be fine. And literally every week, some kind of travel fucked up. And I missed the flight, and I stayed, and I barely got there in time, no time for a nap, and had to run and do the shows. And that just messes you up for the whole weekend. So I didn't get as much writing done as I could, but I did get to at least usually listen to the shows from the night before, think about at least, if not, because basically what I'm trying to do now, it's kind of the way I was looking at the hour was kind of the way I've heard sculptors, I guess, sculpt, where sometimes I've heard sculptors say, I don't know if they all sculpt like this, but they'll have a piece of stone or rock and they chisel away, and then the way they chisel, it kind of tells them what it's going to be or something like that. This sounds already pretentious. I'm already regretting this metaphor. But and what I'm saying is that I'm kind of trying to look at the material I already have and pull the theme out of that and figure out what the theme is, because I do write about my real life. There is themes and stuff there. So I was just trying to figure out what it was really about, and it was really kind of getting there. But now, it was already feeling like a lot of it had to do with a breakup that I went through in September, and doing the material now already in March when I'm over it. I got a new girlfriend. I'm feeling good. It was already feeling like, man, I'm really going to talk about this for this entire next year. And now that there's been this giant global tragedy, it feels even more petty. So I don't know if I'll go back to it. I don't know if I'll still do it, but it's interesting to listen to it now and to think about working on it more. I don't know what I'm going to do with it all.
Yeah, that's great. And you said that they've been postponed, they haven't been cancelled like the rest of the tour. So have you announced new dates?
No, those were canceled. I just got final word today that I had 2 different weeks in April that were both canceled. So all that stuff's canceled. I'm hoping stuff will pick up in May. I know people are sick and dying, so this is not nearly as bad as what everyone else is going through. But it's pretty crazy. It's my first time I really had a whole year planned. I was just going to focus on this. I had a 3-week European tour planned in May that I was really looking forward to. I was supposed to hit Barcelona, Lisbon, a 5-day run in Switzerland, a couple of shows in Finland, a week in Oslo, and then I was maybe going to go to Barcelona just for a week before that, just to hang out, and that's up in the air. It's all, and it's also, just my income is up in the air, and just it's all very much up in the air. So I don't really know what's happening. And nothing's been postponed. Things are straight up canceled, and I don't know when they're going to come back. I really don't.
And you've toured in Europe before? I'm fairly sure that you have, a couple of years ago, right?
I've done 2 different little runs in Europe. I did about 5 years ago. I did a Baltic tour, and include a Scandinavian/Baltic tour. And then this last summer, summer 2019, I did kind of a Central European tour.
Right.
And what I haven't done though is I haven't really toured in Britain at all, in any of Great Britain, and I really would rather. Although the crowds are getting better, I really am excited to try and perform in places where English is the first language.
Native language, right.
The crowd, yeah, I mean they speak very good English in those Scandinavian countries, but I always say, and look, if someone's listening, if I'm going to put on a good show for you in Norway, please don't be upset that I'm saying this right now, but I think there's a difference between, there's like, people in Scandinavian countries speak excellent English, but there's a level of English above that, and it's comedy English, and they don't necessarily get it on that level. Plus, they're not very emotive people, Right. So those two things combined lead to some really somewhat dead crowds. But honestly, I was actually in Bergen, Norway. They have this really cool club in Bergen, Norway, where I performed 5 years ago, and I performed again there this last summer. And I thought the crowds were actually pretty great. I actually found that all of the European crowds are getting better. It's something about like I think it's just more and more exposure to stand-up. They just understand it more. They understand that yes, even though they're Europeans and they hold in their emotions, they are supposed to laugh out loud, And the crowds are just getting better. So hopefully it keeps moving that direction.
That's great. And like, that's what I was gonna say. Like, compare it to the U.S. crowd, like that are used to you, that always see you at the same time, and then compare it to the European crowds. I wanted to get back to when I actually saw you for the first time, and of all the places in the world that I would get a chance to see you, was in Suzhou, China. In 2016.
Oh yeah, that was a great little tour.
Yeah, so I like a little background. Like I went over there maybe a couple of weeks before to start my new job there. Some people thought I was crazy, going to China to do that, but I'm currently still living in Shanghai now. Cool. So obviously come back here with the virus and whatnot to be with family in Australia. But how did that all come about for you? I mean, most of my listeners know about my experiences in China, but for you, how did that all come about?
Well, there's a guy who ran the Shanghai Comedy Club. His
yes.
Name, man, I'm blanking. I thought his name was Andy. But,
Andy.
Yes. That's what I feel. That's what my heart's telling me right now. I'm an old man, so I could be making that up. But he's a great dude. He set up this whole run for me, and he kind of set up basically, he with that club as like the base. He added all these gigs all over the place on top of that, and it ended up being, it was really fun, but it was really hectic. It's I got a cold right when I got there, I believe, into to China. Well, I've tried to remember all this. Even tell you the truth, the city where you said you saw me.
Yeah.
Can't remember that I was in that city. I forgot. I don't know which city I was. I can't remember all the names of the cities I was in. I was definitely in Shanghai and Beijing.
Yes.
I was definitely in the place where they have the Panda Museum and they're famous for hot pot. What is that? Chengdu. Yeah, Chengdu. And I guess I was wherever you said I was.
Suzhou.
Yeah.
So Suzhou is you would have done. I'm fairly sure that you told me that you did Shanghai before you come to Suzhou. It's like you jump on the speed train and it takes about the speed trains there are amazing. It takes like maybe 25 minutes to go. Instead of a 3-hour drive, it takes like 25 minutes on the speed train to Suzhou. So yeah, that's where I saw you, and it was it was the first time that I'd actually gone out. And it's like, okay, my friends were big comedy fans, and it's like, we're gonna go to this Irish bar, and there's a US comedian that's like, hell yeah, someone that can speak English, Yeah. And it was great, and I got a photo with you and Molly as well. She was also with you at the time. But yeah, great show. But then,
thanks.
Then apparently the guy that was running that bar after that show cancelled. apparently he didn't have a proper license to
Oh, no way.
actually have like stand-up comedy shows. So I think you were one of the last shows there. But it's a good little
Last
camel.
show there. Last show in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I'm really closing down places. Really.
That's right. Yeah, it's starting to get a bit of a trend.
Yeah.
That's
It's not looking good.
no, but talking about China, did you get an actual chance to go and sort of look around, or was it just pretty much a full-on touring schedule?
Well, I did, and I'd been to China before, but Molly, who I was touring with, my girlfriend at the time, hadn't been there. And I was gonna say it was just I'm like determined to go, and if I'm gonna fly halfway around the world, I'm gonna see the country I'm in. I like seeing different countries and stuff. But it was like I got there, I had a cold right when I got there, and then the time difference like really screwed me up. So it was like we were doing as much as we could, but it was like pretty hard to fit in actual tourist stuff. We did get to see the Great Wall. We did get to see. Usually, I think, especially if you're in a town for one day, I try to go to. I see one thing. If they're famous for one thing, I try and do that. And if they're famous for one food, I try and eat that. So I definitely had hot pot in Chengdu.
Yes.
I think in the town you're talking about was into very cumin-y stuff.
Yeah, the gardens in Suzhou.
The gardens. We did the gardens there,
famous.
and we had cumin-y food, like their food has full of cumin or something. I don't know.
Yes.
And then so we definitely got to see a little bit of everything, but not as much as I would have liked, and I definitely should have added days on afterwards. I think it was Doug Stanhope, the comedian Doug Stanhope, I think he was the one who said, like, you want to separate the two. It's like you either want to travel somewhere or do you want to do comedy. I mix them up. I think, well, the thing I've learned actually since then, maybe is it since then or maybe just, actually I learned it in my other European tour, was that you kind of want to add a week either before, at the tail end, or if you're going out internationally and you really want to see the place. This is what I was going to do on my New Orleans tour, is that like add a few days at the end or the beginning. I think the end is better because then you feel like you deserve a vacation, and then you use those days to really go around and see stuff without the pressure of a show at night.
Yes. So you're just relaxed and you're not trying to remember your lines and your material and whatnot. So
yeah.
So was it what you expected of China? Because I remember when I first went over there, it was definitely not what I expected. I just thought of the cliche things. What did you expect when you got there, or?
Well, I mean, like I said, I'd been to China before, so I'd seen it a little bit. I guess my impression was, let me think what I thought about it in general. I mean, this is my first time doing shows there. So I was, the crowds, I had no idea what the crowds would be. They kept getting better, actually, every show. They ended up being really good. I think the first show we did in Chengdu was like a good percentage of the crowd didn't speak English, so that's like I can't do anything for them. I've done that. That's happened to me before. I mean, it's not the first time that's happened. Yeah. And so that was kind of a bummer. The one thing I thought was funny, and you mentioned it about the first time you went out, and I'm sure I enjoyed talking to you, but it was like, man, I could tell how much all you expats, how lonely you all were.
Oh, yes.
But I could tell. Yes. Everywhere I went, people really talked my ear off. They were so happy to talk to me.
Don't leave us, Louis. Come back tomorrow night.
They were so happy to talk. Yeah. And none of the clubs where I was playing had a separate like dressing room, green room. So I'm just out there. So usually someone after the show will be like, "Hey, thanks for the show. See you later." Oh man, people would love to talk because I feel like they were so lonely. So that was my impression of like the expats. I think this guy actually, another cool thing that I really enjoyed out there was I played these bookstores that I think have since shut down. There was one in Chengdu and one in Beijing, owned by, I believe, an Irish guy that I've heard have since shut down. And those bookstores were very, very cool. I was so glad to see them. The food was good, And I kind of got the feeling, I think I realized for the first time that I think, and you live in Shanghai, right?
I do live in Shanghai now. Yes, I've moved there. I've been there for 12 months now, and it definitely fits. It's a very lots of expats, very modern city compared to these other, Chengdu and Suzhou. So yes, I feel a lot more comfortable now.
Good. Well, I was also saying though, and my friend when he was living there for a few years, he lived in Shanghai too. But it seems like Beijing might be the hipper city, like a little more artsy, a little bit, right?
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
I only realized that on this last trip, and I would actually like to see more of that, more of Beijing, and more of that if I ever went back,
I
But
think it has a good sort of vibe, like with the comedy shows as well. I think you could probably do a couple of shows there in Beijing.
I'd love to come back. I should reach out to. I mean, I don't know. I would love to anywhere where they're suppressing this virus, and I can come there and perform would be great. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know when I'll be allowed to travel again. So we'll see.
Yeah, just play it by ear. And speaking of which, have you ever been to Australia? I know that you had a guest on your podcast. You were talking about one of the guy, actually your co-host, went down to Australia, did a couple of shows.
Oh yeah, he did.
So have you ever been to Australia?
No, I mean, what you talking about? I have a podcast called Roadheads with Matt Fulcher on. We talk all about travel, which is great in this time of no traveling at all. And but he opens for Tom Segura, so he went with Tom Segura down there recently. Right. I have never been there, which really bums me out because I'm very good friends with Arj Barker, who is
nice.
I think a pretty big comedian down there.
Yeah, definitely.
And for some reason, this friendship has not led to any kind of touring down there at all. Even though we're good friends, he's got his own system worked out for how he tours. But I would love to go down there, just to go. I love to go everywhere. I love to travel. Yes. But B, I've always, we always hear here how big Arj is down there. And I just really want to see it with my own eyes and just and see the country with him because he's like, he's a true. I mean, I don't know if he has a citizenship yet there or not, but I'd really love to travel around there with him and just to check it out with him. Me and him, we've gone on the road several times together, and we have great times together. So I would just love to hang out there with a big comedian who knows the whole country. I think that'd be pretty great,
Yeah. Oh, because they've always got it might be similar to the US. They have like a full sort of circuit. You start at the top of in Brisbane, in Queensland, and you just work your way all the way down through the theatres. And actually, it's in Melbourne. I think he's from Melbourne. Always, you've got the Comedy Central, Comedy Channel that always has tours. And I'm in Newcastle, which is just near Sydney. And cool. We've got our Civic Theatre here that always has comedians sort of going through. So yeah, definitely after this whole virus thing, get down here, Arj Barker. I'll try and help you out as well.
I'd love to. I really would love to get back there or to go there for once.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so let's go back into your sort of history. So you grew up in LA, right?
Yep. That's right.
Born and bred. Did you have sort of influences at like an early age as a comedian, or when did you sort of start to realize that this is what you wanted to do as like a career-wise?
Well, I guess my early influence. I loved I was not really into stand-up necessarily. I liked maybe Eddie Murphy and Chris Rock a lot when I was growing up. But I was really just into like the subversive nature of comedy in general. So I'd say my earliest like comedy things were like less stand-up and more magazine and like Saturday Night Live. I loved the idea of a parody. I loved the idea that there's this bizarro world where they take things that are one way in the real world and they twist them and they make fun of them. And Saturday Night Live was especially cool to me because it was on late. It was like, you had to stay up late and past my bedtime and see this thing where it was all crazy, in the ways that they couldn't show it early on. And so I'd say Saturday Night Live, Mad Magazine, and then also like Mel Brooks, Naked Gun, and all those kind of movies.
Yes.
And maybe the Farrelly
Liam
Brothers
Neeson.
movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. All those things were like big influences. And I think that actually helped me when I started stand-up was that I hadn't seen that much stand-up. So a lot of stand-ups have to like wean themselves off their influences because they're so in their head. And I don't think I had it as much. If anything, the first thing what I watched a lot actually right before I did stand-up was I watched a lot of Comic View on BET, which is Black Entertainment Television here in the States.
Right.
And it was all black comics. And so maybe that was in my head a little bit, but I don't know. I didn't have that much of someone else's voice inside of my own head to dominate it. And so I think the fact that sketch and movies and all that stuff was a bigger influence actually freed me up to do my own thing more.
What do you think of Saturday Night Live now compared to when it was? Because I was the same. I remember watching it, like that. It also showed like live here in Australia, and I just remember like Will Ferrell and even like in the 90s when it was Donna Carvey, but then it even goes back and then they show like the repeats and it would have Chevy Chase, so hilarious and funny.
Yeah.
What do you think of it now? Like, in my opinion, it's not as good as what it used to be, but it still gives opportunities for comedians.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is I don't watch it enough to have a real opinion of it.
Right.
But when I do see it, it does feel a little bit like it's hard for me now that I have all this more knowledge. I know too much about comedy for it, and it ends up getting ruined because I know too much. But I watch it and I feel like I can really tell they're like just a bunch of 20-something UCB kids writing the sketches and performing them. Have you ever gone to see them tape Saturday Night Live?
I haven't. I tried really hard when I've been to New York. I've been there a couple of times. You've got to go on some sort of wait list now, and like they could call you up 6 months later, but I'm not there. So I've been on the Jimmy Fallon, and I went on David Letterman, and tried to do all the late night shows. But never got a chance for Saturday night. Oh, actually did the tour, but never got a chance. Oh,
that's cool. You did all that. That's very cool. Well, the interesting thing about it is because of what you're saying. So a lot of those tickets, it's not all lottery. Sometimes they hook people up. It's like a hookup that you can get tickets for this thing. So who has the hookup is like established, richer, older people. So you got these 24-year-old UCB kid who's never lived life and, writing these obscure sketches to be performed in front of these like 50 and 60-year-olds, and it just that's who's in the crowd watching the sketches.
Yeah, right.
So it just seems like, I don't know. Look, I think Saturday Night Live is, it's kind of cool because it's kind of like New York. People complain about New York changing. It is constantly reinventing itself, and it constantly has, at least, even if it's not hitting the marks, hitting the opportunity to be great, it can be great at any point. At any point, they could just get some new big star in there, and it could be phenomenal again. And so I never count it out. I never count it down. I would just say sometimes lately when I've seen, and I know I've got I'm a big fan of Michael Che, and Chris Redd is on there. I'm a fan of his, and Pete Davidson, he opened for me back in the day. So I have friends that are on there now that I think are very funny and very talented. So I haven't seen it all. Sometimes when I watch it, I feel that way. There's some kind of disconnect that it's almost like it's going a little too young and hipster when it comes to some of the comedy. But sometimes I see it other times, and it's just, the sketches are great, so it always has a chance to be wonderful. That's what I think about it.
Well, they're definitely like giving the opportunities for people like writers and actually comedians to, have a chance. And then look at the people that have been on there and they've gone on to movies and, had a great career as a comedian. So, I think the same way. Oh, so getting back to your family and growing up, what did your parents sort of think of it when you said, "Hey, mom and dad, hey, I'm going to be a comedian"? What did they think then, and what do they think now?
They've actually always been very very supportive of me, believe it or not. And I think it was kind of easy for them to be supportive of me to do that because I got some success very early on. Within 4 years of starting, I got an agent and went and did the Montreal Comedy Festival, which is the other big international comedy festival. And I did all of that 4 years in, and then I was on TV right after that, and ever since then, I've kept steadily working and steadily achieving at least small things here and there all the time. And I don't know if they would have been less supportive if I hadn't, but I got all those things, so they really couldn't say anything, and they've always been very supportive of me no matter what. They didn't care about it. And my comedies can be real, nasty and filthy, and they're used to it by now. They know I do all kinds of crazy shit, and they're okay with it. So they're good.
That's great. And how did you get your first agent? Do you go and find them, or do they come and find you? How does it all work?
No, it was kind of a crazy story, actually. It was I was doing the callback for that Montreal Comedy Festival.
Right.
And it was so it's like we're talking 2004 or 5. I think 5.
Written down 2005 here.
Yeah, 5 probably. I mean, like, man, I'm just so old. But man, it's pretty crazy if it was 2000. Anyway, I think it was 2005. I go in the callbacks. The callbacks are at this like Japanese restaurant / club that they used to have on Sunset called Miyagi's, I think, on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. So they've got like bridges with like rivers with koi fish in them in the midst of all the tables. It's packed. There's like 25 or 20 something comedians on the bill. Everyone's supposed to do 5 minutes. Everyone is blowing the light. People are doing like 10 minutes. Everyone's going long, and I'm, no joke, dead fucking last on this lineup. And I'm sitting there, and everyone's going long. I'm so pissed off. And I get up there, and I just channel all that anger into the act. It was I was doing a very ranty bit where I just like kind of go off at some shit. And somehow I managed to kill, even like the crowd was dead. And I got up there and I crushed. And afterwards, this guy comes up to me. His name was Doug Edley. He was at the Gersh agency, and he gave me his card. And the next day, all of a sudden, I'm getting a call, and I'm having breakfast in Beverly Hills with an agent. And man, I grew up in L.A., but I didn't know anything about any of this stuff. I didn't even know what an agent was. I really didn't. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that it was a big deal that he was talking to me. I was just like, okay, cool. I mean, honestly, like, it was very cool that I got that, and he helped me out like in the very beginning of my career. But it did, I think if I had gotten Montreal a few years later, I would have known how to capitalize on it more, on being at that festival. Yeah. And I think also a downside of getting all this stuff that early was that was having an agent that early in my career. I kind of became dependent on the agent. So I was like, oh, I have an agent. He's supposed to be taking care of all this stuff. And really, I should have been learning how to do it all myself. And so that kind of took me a while to realize, like, oh no, I have to hustle up all this work myself. Like, it's me that's supposed to do. Or I mean, if maybe if he was a better agent, he would have got me more work. But it was like I really became dependent on an agent too early, whereas I should have been developing all these relationships with clubs and different people in the industry on my own and personally myself.
So can you still have a career without an agent, or do you still need that sort of agent to do like more bookings?
I mean, hey man, I haven't had an agent in maybe 4 going on 5 years now.
Yeah,
Since
right.
Not having an agent, I've written on 2 seasons of a television show. Wow. I've done my This Is Not Happening piece, which has gotten like 2.4 million views on YouTube.
Wow.
I've released an album that was one of the top 5 albums of the year according to vulture.com, and that's all without reps. So I'm sure a rep could help me do more than that, but I did all that on my own, and I kept all the fucking money. So, there
that's
you go.
Right. Because you'd have to give like a percentage, they take a cut out of everything that you do. And do you think, like we were saying before about that the Chinese tour, was that booked under an agent, or you said your friend?
No. That was just me. I met him in New York. we were talking about doing it, and he hooked it up. And now that's how I do. Half the gigs are through that. Half of it is through I do some clubs, but also, I mean, the cool thing is this comedy boom in Los Angeles, in the United States, really means that almost every city in the States has its own little local comedy scene. And I can, so sometimes I just book gigs like that. I'll find out it works better in cities where there aren't, if there's a big comedy club and maybe they don't book me for whatever reason, I can go around them and book my own show. Now, it might not be enough money, but if I can set up a bunch of dates in a row like that in cities that are close together, I can make my money. So between, there's more independent. There's been when I started comedy, it was really the improvs and funny bones that kind of like were this giant chain that kind of dominated the country's comedy scene.
Right.
And now there's a few other chains that have since opened up and spread around. Punchline Comedy Club has opened a few different clubs. The Helium Comedy Clubs have opened to different clubs. There's this guy who runs the Spokane Comedy Club out of Washington. He now has about like maybe 4 or 5 clubs that he owns and runs. And I'm working in those like outside of these giant corporations. I'm working in these more independently run clubs, and that's helped me out a lot. And some cities have their own comedian-run comedy clubs. Even Detroit has something like that. Houston actually has something like that, and those are very cool. Now, granted, at the end of this coronavirus thing, all those clubs will have closed. Yes. But I worked them a little bit now. No, I don't know if they'll be closed, but I'm just saying. Hopefully they're all still open. Hopefully they're all still open. Yeah, that'd be awesome if they do. And come on, everything will be great. Yeah. Well, who knows though?
So I've also seen online as well that you started. It said that you started like you did a joke for Johnny Carson. You submitted a joke at 9 years old. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is true. It sounds cool in the bio, but really what happened was, I went to school in Los Angeles, and they just found an elementary school and had them fill out all these questions about Thanksgiving, and we all wrote, goofy answers. And a lot of kids got on TV, but I'm the only one that became a comedian, so it becomes part of my bio. That sounds pretty fancy, But yeah, it was cool. He read one of my jokes. It's true. Two of my jokes, actually.
That's awesome. So you're talking about the whole US, going to different spots, and this question some of the people in Australia might not know, but how is your ex-girlfriend going in Portland?
Well, this is all right. You're asking me about the girl. This is an ex.
An ex.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I haven't been with her in a long time, and I haven't heard from her in a long time. But this is from the story I did for This Is Not Happening. This is the one you can see on YouTube. I haven't heard from her in a long time. My last girlfriend, my most recent ex, Molly, who you met, kind of did not want me talking to her anymore for a good reason, and I had to cut off communication with her. So I haven't heard from her in a while, but she is alive as far as I know.
Really?
So that's all I can say is that she is definitely still living,
so she didn't give you any feedback,
and hopefully she's safe.
She didn't give you any feedback on the bits of that you were talking about her.
Well, she was unhappy with it. She thought I got some things wrong, but they were true as far as I remembered them. Yeah. And she was a little bit upset about it though. She was upset, and plus I wouldn't talk to her after that too, so that like kind of compounded the upsetness. But I tried to be as honest. I tried to be totally, I changed some names in there so they were so protected people.
Yes.
But besides that, it's just what happened. So, it is what it is.
And how do you sort of prepare for a show? Do you have like these rituals that you have before a show, or do you just, okay, let's get up. Okay, I know what I'm going to do. How do you go about do that?
Well, I mean, I always I do try and, you asked me earlier, but I do try and work on something new every show, or it's not interesting for me. So I try and either like incorporate a new joke or at least change the order or something. So I'll definitely think about that. But before a show, I won't necessarily write a set list. It just depends, when I was, it's hard to really say. I don't really have a ritual or anything like that. I'll tell you this: I like to, if I'm on the road, I like to exercise at the end of the day, go to the gym, and that's also when I listen to the sets while I'm working out. And then I like to shower and dress right before the show. So that's when I'll shower and dress. Most comedians don't like to eat before they go on because I guess they get nervous and their stomach, they get nauseous or something. I need to eat or I can't perform. Apparently I've only learned this recently. I guess I have a high metabolism or something, but man, if I haven't eaten, I guess my blood sugar gets low or something. I'm talking all the science stuff. I don't know the science of it, but I do know that if I haven't eaten, it really fucks with the show. It's this kind of, the way I put it is like, I've memorized a ton, it's a ton of material in my head that I have.
Yes.
And, one of the tricks you learn early on is you don't worry about memorizing it word for word. You don't worry about having it memorized. You just kind of hope, and because your brain is trained, that when you go for the word, it's like as if there was like all these shelves of words in your brain, right? And or drawers, whatever, and you know where to go for all the words whenever they're there. They just come to you naturally. And when I haven't eaten, I'll like forget where I put a word. It's like I can't find the word that goes in this one place. It's just not there for me. Yeah. And I get it. If I wait a couple seconds, it'll come to me. But man, it's no good. I like to be as sharp as possible. And also because of that, because I work on a lot of new material, I don't drink at all before a show. So that kind of keeps me a little more sharp. I just don't, I don't know. I have a lot of stuff I'm trying to remember. A lot of stuff I'm trying to keep together at one time. And it kind of felt like, instead of feeling like, oh, that was cool, it was a different point of view. It felt like, well, I got through that. I managed to do it, but it was more difficult. So why am I making it more difficult for myself?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, do you get nervous? I mean, like you've been on the Late Show with Jimmy Fallon. I mean, huge audience. Were you nervous at that stage, or did you just get out there and just do it?
Sure. I mean, I'm always, it's weird when sometimes I'll get nervous. I'll get nervous if I know someone like important is in the crowd. I'll get nervous sometimes if I know people in the crowd a lot. That'll make me nervous. And what strangely enough makes me nervous, I say I get nervous on these high stakes things. What really makes me nervous is sometimes a low stakes thing. Like if I'm doing like an open mic, which I don't really do. I don't do it all, but every once in a while I'll be like, fuck it, I'll just do an open mic.
Oh, nice.
Just performing in front of a crowd of comedians makes me incredibly nervous.
Test out your new material?
Yeah, I just know they're extra judgy. Yeah. And I just feel like I freak out when I perform in front of other comedians, or just other comedians. If there's some comedians in a regular crowd, I don't care. But if it's like only comedians, that's a nightmare. Yeah. But really what it is that it's like, if I were to get a set on late night on Fallon or a special or whatever, it's not like I've been working on it for a month or a week or whatever. I've been working on that technically for almost 19 years. So right. I'm ready. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah.
That's what it is. So I'm ready to go. And I just have to remind myself that. And you know what it is? It's also kind of like a roller coaster. I'll be very nervous until I get up there. And then once I'm up there, I know what I'm doing. It's like I'm calm on stage because it can't really hit me that hard. I mean, sometimes if like, I say there's sometimes, here's the thing about it. So usually I'm nervous. Maybe I'm usually not nervous. If I am nervous, I'm nervous till I get up there. And then once I'm up there, I know what I'm doing. But every once in a while, there's this thing. It's kind of like every joke, even the most reliable joke, 0.1% of the time it doesn't work.
Right.
And I say there's always, so you'll have a joke, maybe some joke won't hit right, but I have like little jokes that I can like do afterwards to get them back on my side.
Yes.
And those jokes work like 99.999% of the time. You know what I mean? They just kill like almost all the time. But there's that point one time when it doesn't work, and that'll throw you for a loop. It's kind of like, I always say it's kind of like those Indiana Jones movies where it's like you throw your hardest punch and the guy just takes the punch and just turns around and laughs at you. but doesn't laugh in this case.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Just turns around and looks at you like that's
Yes.
all you got. That's what it feels like. It's like, wow, I just gave you like my best shot and I got nothing. I don't know what to do. Now lately I've learned, like, just over the last couple of years, is to not really let that phase me. I just know I got more jokes in the holster. I know I got more to bring, you know?
Yes.
So I don't really trip out as much when the audience doesn't like one joke or doesn't like a certain part of a joke, because I just know I got other jokes coming. I got plenty of jokes coming.
Got enough
But
material.
that
All those
sometimes
years
will make
of-
me nervous on stage, you know?
Yeah, right. But with the Late Show with Jimmy Fallon, I mean, you have to sort of, do you have like two different sets where it's non-rude and then because that wouldn't feel natural with your sort of set going on to like live TV. So how did you sort of
You mean
adapt
like
to-
as far as like dirty jokes, or you mean stuff like
yeah,
that,
like
curse words?
swearing and dirty jokes, yeah.
Well, I have a ton of material. So
Right.
even though I do a lot of dirty stuff, there's still, I mean, a late night set's only like 4 or 5 minutes, so I can piece together, you know, and there's many times when I've had to perform clean or been asked to perform clean, and I managed to do it. It always is more or less fine. So it's just about, you know, if I have to perform clean, I just have to think about what I'm going to do. And what can be dangerous is there's certain jokes where you think they're clean and then you forget, oh, I do say a word, this one time, you know, so it ends up being a little bit hard to do it, but it can actually be fun sometimes to try and find a different way to tell a joke, you know, just as an exercise. So yeah, I pick the right jokes and I edit them accordingly, and it's not a problem.
That shows a professional right there, mate. Professional.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate
it also says here that you've done featured writing for FX Totally Biased. How did that all come about? Do you prefer that, like, do you think in the future that's something that you'll do, like more writing than just being the comedian? Or
Due to the fact that all live stand-up comedy has ground to a halt, I would love to do some writing right now.
yes,
Also, writing I mean, it takes real love of the game to really go back to stand-up after writing, because the money is silly. Writing for television in the States, the money is just nuts, and especially
Why
if it's
is
a
that?
show that's I think the writing has to be that high because it's seasonal, and you
Right.
don't necessarily. It's not a stable job. Even that is not stable. There's no part of this career at all, anywhere, at any point, where it's stable. Even the most famous comedians are still worried about staying on top, keeping ticket sales high, keeping in the news and in the media, so they can sell those tickets. So, and even writing is like, you know, I mean, a show will be on. You know, an incredibly successful show would be on for 10 seasons, right? That's great. That's a hugely popular show. 10 seasons. Well, all right, great. What are you gonna? Then it's canceled. Now you got 50 more years of life, you know, or 30 more years of your life. What are you gonna do? You might not get a job after that, you know, and it's just very up and down. It's just you know, you have a steady. People are lucky to have steady TV writing jobs, and then when they don't, it's hard to find another one. So I think that's why they pay so much when you do have them, because they're so unstable. And then also, what's great about them also is that we get residuals for every time the TV show airs. So that also keeps us paid a little bit after that as well. And so and you get healthcare from a TV writing job if it's guild. So there's a lot of benefits to having a TV writing job. That being said, and I worked on 2 of my friends' shows, but I think they both know it, I was not that happy at either of those shows, and I've yet to have a writing job that I truly loved, reading on a writing staff. I'm still open to it. I'd still like to try it. But, you know, it's one thing I realized when I had both those jobs. What?
Sorry to cut you off. Why were you not happy with the writing side of it?
I mean, there's a lot, but I would say like just very like one simple thing about it was, you know, as a comedian, you always think, you know, if all I want is someone to pay me to be funny. I just wish I could be paid to be funny. And it's like, do you really want that? Or then I think that, but then after a while, I get really used to this stand up, and it's like I also would like to not have a boss. That's another thing that I really love about stand up. I mean, the degree, like, look, it's crazy. it's even less stable than a writing job, a million times less. The money's way shittier, and there's no health care, and there's no union. But man, no one tells you what to do. I mean, you just do your own thing. It's so free. I mean, really, it's like, if anything, the crowd, I guess, tells you what to do. But you get up there and you kind of just do your act however you want to do it. You say whatever the fuck you want as long as it's funny. And that's like pretty crazy. I mean, dude, it's crazy to have these writing jobs. It's hard as a stand-up comedian, like, and I fuck it, I'll say it, like, as a good stand-up comedian, to submit something and have someone tell me they don't think it's funny. It's like, I'm like, excuse me? You have no idea what's funny. When was the last time you were on a stage? I know what's funny, you know? And of course, maybe they're right. Maybe it doesn't go good in the situation. Maybe it's not good in the context. They could totally be right. I'm just saying it's hard for me to accept that they're right, even if they are right.
Yeah, right. And we were talking earlier before about comedians. Who were your influences and heroes growing up? And can you tell us about some of the newer comedians that you've met in your travels that are really doing, you know, a good job?
I mean, growing up, like I said, I wasn't that into stand-up, except for like Eddie Murphy and Chris Rock, I guess, coming up. Then once I started doing stand-up, and I started so young that it's still pretty young, actually. Like I started at 21 or 20. I just like kind of consumed as much stand-up as I could. And so, I mean, my favorite stand-up album of all time is Dave Attell's Skanks for the Memories.
Nice.
It's great that I get to work with him still. We're becoming good friends. And it's really, really cool. But he's still like one of my all-time favorite comedians. I'd say pound for pound, if you're just saying funniness, no one's funnier than him.
And is he still doing comedian work? Is he still doing tours?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was just opening. I mean, no one is right now, but yes, he was up until now. We even have dates together where I'm opening for him later in the year.
So cool.
That's so Dave Attell. You know, I would say Chris Rock and Eddie Murphy and Dave Chappelle. Dave Attell is a big influence. And then my early favorites were Attell, Stanhope, Mark Maron, Doug Stanhope, Maria Bamford, Dana Gould, Patrice O'Neill. Those were like my early favorites from when I was getting started. And then since then, I mean, there's so many people I love. I mean, up and coming dudes that I really like. I'm very much like, I mean, some of my peers and friends, like I love Ali Wong. She's, you know, Ali Wong and her opener, Sheng Wang, and me, we all started in the Bay Area and we all moved to New York at the same time. So that's my New York crew who I started out with. And they, I'm blown away by both Ali and Sheng are both tremendous comedians. I'm big fans of them.
Yes.
I love, there's a guy out here in New York, Greg Stone, is really funny. Other people that I started when I moved to New York that I met that were really funny. Nate Bargatze and Giannis Pappas are both, you know, great, and Mike Vecchione. See, now I'm just mentioning my friends, and the ones that I don't mention, I'm going to sound like an asshole.
That's okay.
And then the other people I started out with in the Bay, I still love like Moshe Kasher and Brent Weinbach, and then I really like, who else do I like coming up? Oh, I love. Coming up, I would say Chad Daniels is fucking phenomenal. I don't know if you've checked him out, but he's got a bunch of really great albums. Ian Edwards is great. Kurt Metzger is great. Those are the guys I really, really love.
That's great. And Aj Barker.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. See, now I look like an asshole. I'm sure there's other friends of mine that I forgot, and I'm sorry if I forgot them.
That's okay. That's okay. It's like, you know, trying to get you to come out to Australia, you know, get a tour happening.
Yeah. Arj is not. I have to find another way that's not Arj based to come there, because he's not going to get me to come out. It's not going to work out. For 15 years, I've been trying to get Arj to bring me out there. I got to find another way. So maybe you'll be the way. I don't know.
Let's see. Well, I've got you know, majority of my listeners here. I've got some listeners in China. I've got some listeners in the US, but the majority in Australia. So, you know, never know. Let's see what happens.
Yeah,
and we haven't talked about your albums. You've got you got the recent one, Katz Kill, came out in 2018. Do you have plans to release another one in the future?
Oh yeah, I mean, whatever the hour I was doing this year, I wanted to make a special and an album. But like this whole thing has thrown everything out of whack. I actually had a plan. I thought of this before, and now I might try and make a clean album. That's one of my goals.
Oh.
Or I might try and just record the stuff that I already have. I don't know. I gotta figure it all out. Figure out what I'm doing next. But it's just I can't record an album without a crowd. So
Yeah.
we'll see what'll happen.
You also brought out in 2011, If These Balls Could Talk. So why was it like a 6 or 7 year wait for the next album?
Well, a couple things. One, I had a different attitude. At first I felt like I kind of like. Well, I did. I thought like I wasted. I've seen this thing. I thought like, I told you I was way into Stanhope and Marin, and I think both of them. If you're a fan of them, they have good specials and awesome stuff since then. But I really love their first 3 albums, and both of them. And because some people only consume comedy when it's visual as well, like some people will never be exposed to those hours of their work. And to me, I was like, I'm not going to waste another hour on an album. I want to have a special or have something coming out that will blow me up so people actually hear the new hour of material. And I kept waiting and waiting and waiting for that, and I realized that was dumb because first of all, I can't. It's the one thing I control is putting out albums. So why wait for someone else to give me an opportunity? I can put out an album myself. And 2, if you wait too long with the material, you get sick of it, and it's and you have to put out the album when it's ready to go. You just have to.
Yeah. Right.
And another thing was I actually did record that album in. The Katz Kills came out in 2018, I guess, or 19? Yes. 18, you said?
Yes.
At the end of 18, but I first attempted to record that album in 2015.
Wow.
It was the first year so it wasn't even that long. It was like 4 or 5 years later, and I recorded an album, and I did not like it, and I scrapped it. I recorded it. I tried to do pickups with like different crowds at a couple different shows and mix them all together, and then I just trashed the whole thing and decided to do it over again, and that's what Katz Kill ended up being. And I'm so glad that I did because some of the best bits on there I feel are bits that I wrote since then. And it's just a much more solid album all around.
Right. And finally, let's wrap it up here. With your podcast. Who came up with the idea for your podcast? How did it all come about?
Believe it or not, it was actually the idea originally was neither my co-host Matt's nor mine. It was actually Al Madrigal from The Daily Show. He's a very funny stand-up. He's a fucking hilarious stand-up. And he came up with the idea and told Matt. Matt told me, and we decided to do it. And we just took his idea and ran with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we thought it was really great. I mean, it's so ironic now. We thought, man, what is more refillable and what gives it a little theme, but it's totally refillable and every comedian can talk about it? Travel.
Yeah.
And so we made a travel-themed podcast, and now no one can travel. So a huge mistake. But we're going to keep. We're learning. In fact, this is a great example of how you can do these things remotely and they still sound good. And we're going to keep doing them. And we think, maybe now it'll be fun because people can remember the good times when we could travel and we can listen to stories of the days before the virus when we were free.
Pre-virus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just listening to it over the last couple of weeks, it just feels really natural. Like you go off into like a tangent and you can talk for 10, 20 minutes and then it's like, oh, we're talking about this. Do you have that sort of feel as well?
I mean, I don't know. I'm just glad you listen and that you like it. I hope, I feel like sometimes it's hard because comedians are so used to doing, especially when we have a comedian guest, they're used to just talking about whatever on a podcast. And it's important to steer them back to the travel thing. I don't necessarily want to hear about any of the typical stuff. I mean, I'm happy to hear about it, But what I really want to hear is some good travel stories. So we try and steer it back if at all possible. So we try and keep it on theme, but sometimes it isn't, and luckily, the reason Matt and I decided to do it was he has his own podcast, the Full Charge Power Hour. I had my own podcast before that I did on my own called Louis Katz Podcast. And whenever we were guests on each other's podcasts, it just flowed really naturally.
Yes.
And so we're good with guests, and Matt and I are good together. Like it's very, the chemistry is there, so it makes it very easy to do.
All right, Louis, is there anything like we've gone to podcasts, we've got your albums. Is there anything more that you want to promote before we go?
Yeah, just, check out both the albums. If These Balls Could Talk, Katz Kills, check out the podcast, Roadheads. Check out my This Is Not Happening story on YouTube. And if you dig me, please follow me on whatever you follow people on. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. Probably, by the time this week is up, I bet I'll be on fucking TikTok too, because I got nothing else to do with my life.
It's the new it's the new thing that's exploded.
Yeah, I mean, all of it's content. Online content has always been king, but now that I can't even do live shows, it's like I really gotta step that up. So follow me on Instagram, especially. I think that's where I'm gonna focus, and hopefully I'll be posting a lot of really cool stuff soon. So please add me on there. It's Louis Katz Comedy, LOUISKATZ Comedy.
All right, Louis. Thank you very much for your time. I know you're a busy man, and all the best for the future. And make sure you come down, put Australia on your tour.
I'd love to, man. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out, man. I'm glad this worked out. Thank you.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.